Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Heather and we are here with another tier ranking video. If you've been watching my videos, then you'll know that a little bit ago I did my first ever tier ranking and I did it for all of the mysteries and thrillers that I've read. But in an attempt to keep that video to not be so long, I split out all of my Agatha Christie books that I've read, and so that is what this video is going to be, is just tier ranking the Agatha Christie books that I've read. I have read 19 of her books. She's definitely one of my favorite authors. I can always count on her books to get me out of a book slump, and I just love her so much. So this is going to be really difficult for me to tier rank these. There's just not many bad Agatha Christie books. So I'm going to do my best. I'm trying out the mic because I'm filming in a different room, and it's a little echoey. So we're going to try out the mic and see if that's a little bit better audio. Hopefully it works out okay on my shirt like this, and I don't need to like hold it up, but let me get my screen recording going and then we will jump right in. First thing I want to go through while we're doing this is what my tiers are. Again, I tried to make these a little bit more specific because I know I'm going to have a hard time separating these books. So tier 1 is going to be the best of the best. These are just my absolute favorites. Something about them just stood out to me and I really enjoyed them. The next tier down is going to be still a fave. These are books that I still obviously really loved. They just maybe didn't have quite so much of a standout or maybe nostalgia to them. My middle tier is going to be ones that I think are good for newbies. I feel like if you've never read an Agatha Christie book, a lot of the ones that I really love aren't ones that I think people should start with. I feel like you should start with ones that are going to be just a specific way. Some of them that I love are just way too complicated, or I feel like you need to understand characters, or you just need to understand her style a bit better. So these are the ones that I feel like if you've never read an Agatha Christie book before, this is where you should start. And then the next one down is the ones that just immediately left my brain. I literally don't remember anything about them. I could probably reread them and it would be like reading a whole new book. There are a handful of those that just for some reason did not stick with me. So at some point I might like to go and reread these. And then the last column is going to be very empty, I can already tell you, but these are the books that I just didn't like. So I don't know that there will be very many in there, but that's what the final column is. So these are in no particular order. Also, looking at these covers, these are not the covers that I own. The covers that I actually own are the like ones you can get at Barnes & Noble that are like all matching. So just bear with me if I have to try and figure out what these ones are. Some of these are not the most clear on what book they are, but we're just going to dive in with this one that is on the left, and this is the ABC Murders. This one is a Poirot book, and it is basically exactly what it sounds like. It's going through the ABCs. There's a serial killer. This one, I think I'm going to go with still a fave, but it's not like the best of the best for me. I thought it was good, but I also felt like it got a little confusing. I don't think that this is her strong point, is writing these like serial killer characters. Her strong point is writing these like close-knit little closed group of people that it could only be one of these handful of people. That I feel like is really her strength. So I thought it was still a good book, but it's not gonna make it up to the top for me. Then the next one is After the Funeral. This one I'm going to put as good for newbies. I actually really enjoyed this one, and it could go probably in a higher column, but I feel like I also don't remember a ton of the plot points of it. The reason I feel like this one is good for newbies is because it dives right in. Some of her books that are some of the more popular ones, honestly, have this way that she writes them where it introduces you to every character individually, and then you're almost halfway through the book before you really dive into the plot. This one is not like that. This one, you literally start at a funeral, which is under suspicious circumstances, and then you're following through some of these characters that were tied in with that funeral, some of the people who attended it, a couple more people die, and you follow this whole thing. Because of that, I think that this is a lot better for newbies because you dive right in. You don't have that waiting period of introducing characters before you get into the plot. So I feel like this one's a good one to start with if you've never read an Agatha Christie before. And I did really enjoy it. It just didn't quite make it up to my top favorites. All right, and then there were none. This one is one of her more famous ones. This is actually maybe the second or third book that I read of hers. This one was one that my husband had read and he remembered it, and so that's why he suggested that I read Agatha Christie. It's not where I started with her, but it was very early on in my Agatha Christie reading journey. And this one is really hard. It's somewhere between the top two categories. This isn't necessarily where I'd say start. I'm glad that this wasn't my first introduction to her writing. I'm gonna go with best of the best. I think that this one is a really solid one. It is very creative. It's pretty different. This one does not involve one of her, I guess what's the way to put it, serialized detectives. So she's got a few detectives that obviously go through lots of books. This one does not include one of those. You're basically following through this island where all of these people get these invites to come to this island, and then they get cut off from society and people start slowly getting picked off. And it follows this riddle. And so you're like going through the riddle as people are slowly dying. And then it doesn't have your classic ending where a lot of her books, the detective will bring everyone into a room and then like explain it, right? You get a letter at the end and the letter explains it all, and that's how you get the solution. So I don't know. I thought it was a very creative one. I really, really enjoyed it. And so yeah, that's why I made it up to the top. All right, the next one is a Caribbean mystery, and this is the only Miss Marple book that I've read, and I'll be honest, she's not my favorite. There's a reason I haven't gotten to any of her other books yet. I read this one in Mexico, so that was really fun, but it was a very interesting one to read on the beach because they're on a beach in it. But Miss Marple is basically this little old lady who stumbles upon detective work because she's just nosy and she likes to gossip, and everybody's willing to gossip to the little old lady, and so then she finds out a bunch of information about people, which I could see totally being some people's cups of tea. I'm going to put it in good for newbies. I feel like if that sounds down your alley, that would be a good place to start with her. Poirot definitely, I think, can be off-putting to some people because he's got a lot of quirks. If you want to try a different detective, Miss Marple could be the one for you. If you want something that's a little more cozy vibes, not so like, she's not your classic detective, right? You're not going around looking for all these little clues that tip off the detective. She's just going around and gossiping with people. So if you want something that's maybe a little more lighthearted, a little more fun, but still a mystery, this could also be a really good place if you're coming from other genres and wanting to dive into mysteries. I think that this could be a good entryway. Personally, I didn't love it. I like the detectives that are a little more knowledgeable and a little bit more intentional about their investigations. So Miss Marple's not my favorite. I might at some point go back and read some of her other books, but she's not my best favorite one. I definitely am more of a Poirot fan. So good for newbies if you want somewhere to start that's just a little bit different. Crooked House. This one is gonna go up to the top, best of the best. I really enjoyed Crooked House. I thought that this one was a very interesting twist at the end of who did it. This one is one of her classic, you have a family and you've got like kind of extended family, in-laws, kinds of people all living in one house. And then somebody dies and it's kind of a closed, we're not opening it up to people outside, you know it's someone from that little family unit. The other interesting thing about this one is it is also not one of her classic detectives. You're following an amateur. Basically, he is engaged to one of the girls that lives in the house. And so the detectives, well, okay. So one of the detectives, he pops up in a lot of stories. They're like inspector, but he's not like the main person doing the detective work because they go and ask this guy and basically, will you be our inside man because you can be in there not as a detective, people will talk to you because you're there in a different role. And so he does some amateur sleuthing and has to try and figure it out. And yeah, really good. Again, not one I would start with if you're a newbie, but I really, really loved Crooked House. Okay, Death on the Nile. This one is one of her more famous ones. It's obviously been made into a movie lately. I did watch the movie and it wasn't my favorite. This is one of those books that I was talking about earlier that is a classic, super popular book of hers, but it does that thing where it takes and introduces every character one by one for quite a while before you actually dive into the story, which I think can be off-putting for some people. I think you can kind of get bored in trying to follow all of these characters before you actually get into it. That being said, I do think it is a good intro to Poirot, but I'm gonna go with this one as still a fave. I think it's good, but there's nothing super special about it in my mind. It's not one I'm gonna go raving about. It's just a classic one of hers, but it's not one that I think is just like so genius. All right, Five Little Pigs is actually one of the most recent ones that I've read by her. And honestly, even for being the most recent one, I'm gonna put this in immediately left my brain. I don't know what it is about this book, but I just did not latch onto it in my brain very good. And part of it might be that I was kind of using it to get out of, like I was feeling a little slumpy, so I used this one to get out of it. But I just had such a hard time keeping track of the characters in this one. And just, I don't know, something about it just never latched on. Basically what it is I think I'm trying to remember. I think that this is the one where this girl comes to Poirot and asks him to try and solve a murder that was like 16 years in the past, right? So Poirot's not really doing that much investigating. He's mostly just, I mean, he goes and he does stuff, but all of it's just like everybody's trying to remember it, and a lot of it's just like how good of a memory does everybody have and how much is people lying versus just not remembering. But basically her mom went to jail for killing her dad, and she is still 100% convinced that her mom is innocent, and her mom is dead now, so they can't just go ask her. And so the Poirot takes up on himself to try and solve it, and I don't even really remember the solution. It got confusing. So not my favorite of hers, but I mean, everything she writes is good, really. Like, none of these are bad books. She's as big as she is for a reason, but that one, definitely not my favorite. Halloween Party. This one is the one book that I made this bottom category for. I just didn't like it. This one got a lot of hype because it's the most recent movie that they made of it. I have not seen it yet, and they called it A Haunting in Venice. That movie is supposedly based off of this book. So I went and got the book. I don't understand how they are able to claim that this is based off this book. I don't see the connection. Granted, I haven't seen the movie, but my brother went and saw it, and so we were comparing the plots. And it's so different. It's kind of crazy. I also think it is just absolutely insane that they went and repackaged this book as A Haunting in Venice. I don't understand. Anyways, basically this one is this little girl. Is it a girl? I'm having a hard time remembering it. Someone dies at a Halloween party, and then one of the adults that happened to be at the party was just like visiting this little tiny town, and she happens to know Poirot from a book I haven't read. So I don't know where that character comes in, but she goes and gets Poirot and brings him in a couple days later to try and solve it, right? I just could never get interested in it. This took me so long to read because I just didn't care. And it just was one of those things where it just wasn't interesting enough. And honestly, I think it was a little girl that died, and she was just annoying. And so it was kind of like everyone was a suspect just because this girl was just mean to everyone. But it's like, really, why do you kill a kid just for being mean? Which is not what the solution is. But it just, I don't know, could never latch on to this one. Okay, The Mousetrap. This one is actually a play. And I have read the script a couple times, book script, however you want to call it. It's a script. And I've seen it once on stage. I think, honestly, next time I go to London, I think I might make this one happen on the West End, but I saw it in Utah. They did it at a more local theater. But The Mousetrap is written as a script. So just be forewarned that it's not formatted like a book. There's not all of the filler stuff. It's not paragraphs, right? You have like the name, colon, here's their said, and then you'll have the little like set description things. As somebody who used to do theater, this felt very nostalgic to me to read a script through. This is going to go in best of the best for me. I love it. I will reread it many a time. I definitely want to go see it again. It's just a super fun one. I also think that this one's perfect for winter because a huge part of the plot is that they all get snowed in. So it's all these people come to this little like bed and breakfast type place, and then they get snowed in. And then a policeman, I'm trying to remember exactly what happens. You're following this story on the radio, but then all of a sudden the power and the lines get cut and stuff. Anyways, a policeman comes in. Oh no, I think they get a call from the policeman and he says, hey, we need to come and talk to somebody. We think that somebody might be this fugitive from this other case we're investigating. And so he like skis in and does some investigating. It's got this whole, I guess, motif would be the word, of the Three Blind Mice song. And it's just really fun. But again, a perfect winter one if you want just a really quick, short read that is still a fun little mystery. It's Agatha Christie, but it is a play, so just be forewarned, it is a script. But I really, really love Mousetrap. And I need to find more of her plays. I know there's more out there. I need to do some research and find some because I really, really enjoyed that. The Murder of Roger Ackroyd. I think that this one's gonna go into the best of the best for me. This one's a Poirot one, and basically Poirot decides he's gonna retire, and he just wants to go and grow vegetables in a little town in England. And so he goes to this little town, and he moves in next door to a doctor, and they start up this little funny friendship, and then somebody dies, and Poirot ends up getting looped into it, and he brings the doctor along as his little sidekick, and so him and this neighbor are going around and trying to solve this murder. And so basically Poirot just is not allowed to retire, is kind of how it goes. This one had a really fun twist ending at the end. I felt like it had a lot of fun, just classic Poirot moments where he's going around. And one thing that you need to know before you jump into Poirot books is he is just so OCD, I guess is what it is. He's so particular about everything. And one of the funniest things to me is how he always calls the police, like the normal police, the bloodhounds, because he's always like, they want to do the footprints. They want to find all, like, do all of this. And he just wants to think through it, right? That's how he works. But this one is one where they go around and the doctor's like pretending to be a detective, right? So he wants to go and do all of these detective-y things. And Poirot is just like, why are you doing that? But yeah. I love how eccentric Poirot is. I think it's hilarious, but I know a lot of people don't, but I loved that one. Murder on the Links. This one's another one that I feel like just did not stick in my brain. I forget that I read it. It's just not one that stood out to me in any ways. The ending was just like, okay. The one thing about this book though, is I do feel like the character that he goes around with in this one pops up in a lot of books. So a lot of the information in this one is like Easter egged into other books. So that part is fun. This one I mostly read because I've been going through in order of, well, been trying to go through and read the Poirot books in order. I've obviously been kind of jumping around, but yeah, just not a lot to say about this one. I just don't really remember. It was kind of a crazy one. It happens in Paris, not Paris. It happens in France. They go to Paris at some point in the investigation, but yeah. I don't have much else to say about that one because it's in that category for a reason. Murder on the Orient Express. Obviously one of her like pinnacle, most famous books ever. And this one, I am going to go with still a fave. Well, I'm trying to decide. This was the first Agatha Christie I ever read. I started here. I don't think that this is where you should start. Again, this is another one of them that goes through and introduces all the characters and then brings it all together. It's just a classic. It's really good, but you do have to wade through that first part. The movie of this one is really good. Of all the, I guess I've only watched a few Poirot ones, but this is one of the better movie versions that they've made. Don't have a ton to say about this one. Obviously, it's so famous, but it's still a fave. It's just not anything crazy special in my mind. The Mysterious Affair at Styles. This one, if I'm remembering correctly, is the first Poirot book. So I'm going to put it in good for newbies. I will say I don't feel like this is her most fantastic book ever. And I have a little bit of a hard time remembering exactly what goes down in this one. But with it being the first, I should double check with that. Is that actually the first one? Yeah, okay, it is. So yeah, with it being the first Poirot book, if you wanted to dive into that, this one introduces him in a good way that I think helps you understand some of his eccentricness. If you want a good place to start with Poirot, I would start at the beginning. So I think that is a good one for newbies if you want to dive into the Poirot books. Poirot Investigates is a collection of short stories, obviously following Poirot. Some of them are better than others. That's just how it goes when you get into a collection of short stories like that. I am going to put this one on good for newbies because I think, again, if you want to dive into Poirot and Agatha Christie, reading some short stories and just getting a little bit at a time, you get a taste for kind of how she writes and for the Poirot character, but you don't have to commit to a whole book. So I think a short story collection like that can be a really good option, but it's not like my absolute favorite. I love the longer, more complicated plots, and that's part of what I love about her writing. So it's fun to get just a little bit of a snippet of Poirot, but it's not on the level that her novels are. Hercule Poirot's Christmas, I'm gonna go with still a fave. I feel like this one was just a classic Agatha Christie book. I don't have like a ton to say about this one. This one involves a really just terrible dad, and basically he invites all of his kids to Christmas and convinces all of them to come back, even though a lot of them haven't been around for a while or been talking to their dad. And then the dad dies. And so then we're trying to figure out, everybody has a motive at that point, who actually did it. Again, just a good classic, nothing super special about it type of a book. The Secret of Chimneys, I also read pretty recently. This one I actually listened to as an audiobook. This is the only one that I listened to as that. And I'm going to go with Immediately Left My Brain. And I honestly think that this one probably suffered slightly because I listened to it. I feel like the old English is just a little bit hard, and the accent was kind of hard for me to understand, honestly. So I think I might have liked that one better if I'd done it as a physical book. So now I know not to try her books as audiobooks anymore, but that's where that one landed for me. The Big Four, honestly, I cannot remember a single thing about this book, so it is going to go and Immediately Left My Brain, more so than even the other ones. I cannot pull out of my brain what this book is even about, so let's look it up. I remember that it is book 5 in the Poirot series because that bugs me that The Big Four is book 5. Oh, yes. So, this one, a guy like shows up in Poirot's house, collapses, and then dies. So now Poirot is trying to figure out what's happening. This one is like, basically Poirot's trying to take down this like international crime syndicate. And it's just, again, I like the formula, honestly, of her books. And so a lot of times when she switches it up, it's not my favorite usually. And I also want to say that this one is following that same side character, which I believe is Hastings, if I can remember his name correctly. Nobody's saying it. Yeah, Hastings. I think Hastings is the side character in all 3 of those books on there. So the Murder on the Links, Secret of Chimneys, and The Big Four. He pops up a lot. And again, when we're in his point of view, we're just in the dark so much that I just don't enjoy them as much. So that's that one. I don't know. If you want to do it a little bit more like Mission Impossible feeling, we're taking down a crime syndicate, that could be an option for you. Towards Zero is another one that is going to go in that Immediately Left My Brain. I'm honestly a little bit surprised at how many there are in this one. And that's not to say that these are bad books. They're still good. For some reason, my brain just did not latch on to them. Towards Zero, pretty much all I remember is that it has something to do with tennis, and there's like this famous tennis player, and they're out in this little English countryside place by a bunch of cliffs and some water. And then they bring in a superintendent from Scotland Yard, maybe. Again, This one I really, really don't remember, and it's been a while since I read this one, like, it's been quite some time, so definitely could revisit this one and probably feel like I was reading a whole new book. Okay, and then the last one, we are going to end off on a high note. This is Why Didn't They Ask Evans, and this is one of my top favorite books by her. In fact, if I had to pick a favorite ever, this would probably be it. This one is following this, I guess, young man that works at a golf course as a like ball pickup boy. And so he goes out on the golf course and picks up all of the balls that have just gone crazy places. And so he's doing that, and he looks down off the cliffs because this golf course is like on the cliffs right by like the ocean or something. And he looks down the cliff and he sees this guy that has clearly fallen down. So he goes running down to this guy and he basically gets his final words. And this guy's final words are, "Why didn't they ask Evans?" And so he's like, what does this mean? This is so confusing. There becomes this whole investigation. And then him and this other girl start diving into it, and it just gets kind of crazy. It's just really fun. You're basically reverse piecing together this crime scene, this whole story, and it's just kind of crazy how things come together. It's just fun. I kind of like an amateur detective every once in a while. I do think that they're really fun. I do also really enjoy Poirot, obviously, but this one also has a TV show that they made with, shoot, what's his name? He's the kid from Narnia. What is his name? Is it Will Poulter? Is that it? Yeah, Will Poulter. He's like the main guy in the movie, and it's really fun. There's like an insane asylum that gets involved. There's like all these crazy things. The show is really good. It is a little bit different from the book. Honestly, I would recommend reading the book first and then watching the show because it's kind of fun to pick up on the differences. The book is a little bit more complicated. The show simplifies it a little bit. So, and it's just like a one-season mini-series show, but it was very well done. I highly recommend. I love this book. It is definitely not one I would start with though. As much as it is my favorite Agatha Christie, this is one of her more complicated ones. It's a little bit harder to follow, so it's not where I'd start if you're a newbie, but if you've read some Agatha Christie's and you haven't seen this one, please go read it. It's really good. That is the end of my tier ranking. So this is where we've settled. Honestly, we have a lot more on the immediately left my brain category than I thought we would. But really there's only just that one book. Halloween Party is the only one that I have like actively did not like by her. And I just don't know what happened with that one. But if you have any more Agatha Christie books that you would recommend, let me know. I am trying to go through the Poirot ones in order now, so I know where I need to go with that one. But if you have any of these other ones that are other types of detectives or more standalone ones, please let me know. I would love to read more. I, at some point, would love to have read all of her books, but she obviously wrote a lot. So it's gonna be some time before I can make that happen, but I'm gonna go ahead and end this video because I feel like it's been pretty long, especially considering I only had 19 books, but thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you in the next one very soon. Bye.